Years had passed since Naruto Uzumaki finally sat in the Hokage's chair, the seat he had dreamed about since he was a lonely child running through Konoha's streets with nobody to call family. He had fought wars, lost friends, and carried the weight of the village on his shoulders, yet one wound never fully closed. Late at night, when the paperwork was done, his mind always drifted back to the two faces he barely remembered: his father, Minato, the fourth Hokage, and his mother, Kushina, who had died protecting him the night he was born. He often imagined a different life, one where he did not have to grow up parentless and starve for warmth he could only guess at through old photographs. He wished he could have had the strength he carried now, but from the very moment he opened his eyes as a baby, able to walk, to fight, to protect the two people he loved before fate ever stole them away. He thought about this all through the quiet hours of the night, turning the same wish over and over in his mind until it felt less like a passing thought and more like a prayer he had never dared say out loud. That night, sitting alone, with moonlight spilling across his desk, the thought consumed him more deeply than ever. He closed his eyes, and before he realized it, sleep took him whole, heavy and warm, as though the universe had decided to answer a quiet wish. When Naruto opened his eyes again, everything was wrong. The world was too big, too loud. He could not understand why his limbs felt so small until his mind, still sharp with decades of memory, pieced together what had happened. He was a newborn. Panic gave way to fierce determination the moment he realized exactly what night this was. The night the Nine Tails attacked Konoha. The night his mother nearly died giving birth to him. The night a masked man ripped Kurama from her seal. This was the one night he would have given anything to change, and somehow he had been given a chance. He tested his tiny arms, expecting only helpless flailing, but felt the familiar hum of chakra beneath his skin, steady and controlled. He tried to speak, and actual words formed, startling even himself. All his training, all his mastery had come with him into this infant body. Focusing his chakra into his palm, a rough but real Rasengan spun to life. In that same instant, driven by sheer will, his small body pushed itself upright. A newborn baby, only moments old, was standing on his own 2 feet amid a night filled with screaming and destruction. Obito Uchiha, who had come that night to rip the Nine Tails from Kushina, froze at the sight before him. He had expected a helpless infant and a dying mother, an easy conquest. Instead, he found a newborn standing upright, a spinning ball of chakra in his palm, eyes burning with the focus no baby should have. It was unnatural and deeply unsettling even for a man who had seen more than his share of the extraordinary. Rather than risk exposing himself to an unknown threat, Obito made the calculated decision to retreat, releasing his hold on Kurama as he fled, and the massive fox let out an earth-shaking roar as it thrashed against its chains, no longer steered by a hidden hand. Minato, arriving just as the masked man vanished, saw his newborn son standing tall amid the wreckage. For a moment, he simply could not process what his eyes were showing him. He knelt beside the child, half expecting an ordinary crying infant, but when small fingers wrapped around his own with a grip far too steady for a newborn, he understood on some instinctive level that his son was no ordinary child.
"Naruto?" Minato whispered, his voice trembling. Naruto, straining an infant's throat against thoughts too complex for this body, forced the words out.
"Dad, it's me. I know this sounds impossible, but I'm really me. Naruto, all grown up, somehow set back. We're in danger. Kurama is loose, and the man who took him is fleeing right now. Please, we need to help Mom."
Every word cost him effort, but the urgency was unmistakable, and Minato, trusting his instincts, chose to believe him. Naruto turned toward the raging Nine Tails, still thrashing within Minato's barrier. Drawing on knowledge of seals and of the bond he would one day forge with Kurama, he began the delicate process of resealing the fox within himself, moving through the seals with a calm precision that belied his infant body. Kurama, sensing something oddly familiar in this small human, offered less resistance than anyone could have expected, and the resealing was completed safely without the catastrophic cost that had once claimed Minato and Kushina's lives. With Kurama safely sealed, Naruto rushed toward his gravely injured mother. In the original timeline, this was the night Kushina died, her body too damaged from the extraction, her final moments spent holding her newborn son. Naruto refused refused with every fiber of his being to let it happen again. Drawing on healing techniques strengthened by his newly harmonized connection to Kurama's chakra, he pressed his tiny hands against her wounds and began channeling chakra into her failing body. Slowly, her ragged breathing evened out, her color returned, and the wound that should have claimed her life began to close. Minato watched in stunned silence as his newborn son performed something he could barely comprehend. When Kushina's eyes finally fluttered open, sweet but alive, and she saw her husband and her miraculous baby standing over her, she could only stare in bewildered relief. The night that should have torn their family apart instead bound the three of them together in a way neither parent could have imagined. Naruto had done what he came back to do. He had saved his mother. In the days that followed, Minato and Kushina sat down with their extraordinary son to make sense of everything. Naruto explained that he was truly their son from a future that would now never happen. A version of himself who had lived a full life, become Hokage, fought wars and lost people he loved, only to somehow be given a second chance. He told them about growing up alone, about villagers who feared him because of the fox now sealed peacefully within him. Kushina, holding her baby as he spoke with the voice of a grown man, felt tears welling, overwhelmed by grief for the life her son had lived and gratitude that fate had given them all another chance. Naruto also warned them about the masked man, revealing his identity as Obito Uchiha, a shinobi long believed dead, dedicated to a dangerous plan involving genjutsu and a moon-sized eye meant to trap the world in illusion. Minato fell into troubled thought, wanting to hunt Obito down immediately, but Naruto, understanding his own physical limitations as a child too young to fight, urged his father to wait until he grew strong enough. Reluctantly, trusting the wisdom in his son's eyes, Minato agreed, and the small family returned home, safe and bound by a secret only the three of them shared.
Naruto grew, though not like an ordinary child. By age 7, he had already secured his place as the top student in the academy, effortlessly outperforming classmates in everything from chakra control to written examinations. Though what teachers saw as raw talent was actually decades of hard-won mastery expressed through a younger vessel. Minato personally oversaw his son's training outside academy hours, and under his father's guidance, Naruto was taught the Flying Thunder God technique at an unusually young age, cherishing every lesson as a gift more precious than any jutsu itself. Despite his growing strength, Naruto never lost sight of the dangers he alone remembered. He tried more than once to warn his father about the disaster brewing within the Uchiha clan, but Minato would simply laugh and reassure him not to worry so much. Frustrated, but understanding that some lessons could only be learned through experience, Naruto resolved to stay close and watch carefully, ready to intervene the moment real danger presented itself. The moment Naruto had quietly dreaded arrived when young Itachi Uchiha, burdened with knowledge of his clan's secret plans, came forward to warn the Hokage about the impending uprising. This time, Minato responded not with panic, but with calm, measured resolve, choosing to address the Uchiha clan directly rather than let hardliners like Danzo handle the situation through the shadows. He traveled to the Uchiha compound with Naruto beside him, prepared to face whatever awaited them with honesty rather than force.
Fugaku Uchiha had steeled himself for confrontation, expecting threats. Instead, Minato sat down across him and asked a simple, direct question no Hokage had ever asked before. What do you want? The question caught Fugaku completely off guard, unraveling years of assumptions about how this meeting was supposed to go. Stunned, Fugaku found himself opening up in a way he never had before, speaking of years of quiet discrimination, of being pushed to the margins despite the clan's sacrifices and loyalty. Minato listened without interruption. The conversation was interrupted when a handful of radicalized Uchiha, already invested in rebellion, attempted to attack mid-discussion, believing the visit to be a trap. Before Minato could react, Naruto moved, subduing every attacker with a speed and precision that left the room frozen in shock. Fugaku stared at the boy, struggling to reconcile his age with the level of skill he had just witnessed. In that disbelieving silence, Minato explained what his son had already uncovered, that the hostility driving the clan toward rebellion had been carefully engineered from the shadows by Danzo Shimura, who sought to exploit the tension for his own dark purposes. Fugaku's expression shifted from confusion to a slow, dawning fury, not at the village he had long resented, but at the manipulator who had steered his clan toward destruction. Armed with undeniable evidence, Minato acted swiftly, suspending Danzo from his position immediately and stripping him of the influence he had spent years building through fear and secrecy. He then turned toward genuine reconciliation, appointing both Itachi and Fugaku as leaders within the Anbu and promoting several talented Uchiha into meaningful positions throughout the village. Fugaku began working closely alongside Minato as a trusted advisor, his knowledge proving invaluable for navigating the path toward lasting peace. Shisui Uchiha, whose death had once been a devastating catalyst for tragedy, remained alive and safe, his warnings about Danzo reaching the right ears before harm could come to him. Without Danzo ever gaining access to a Sharingan, and without the desperate fear that had once driven a clan toward rebellion, the entire crisis dissolved into a fragile but genuine peace. The Uchiha clan, no longer treated as outsider, began to heal, and the shadow of tragedy quietly lifted away. With the weight of rebellion and tragedy lifted, young Sasuke Uchiha grew up in a world unlike the one Naruto remembered. No massacre, no crushing burden of revenge, an older brother who remained by his side as a source of warmth rather than a distant, tragic memory. From the beginning, Naruto made a point of befriending Sasuke, refusing to let cold isolation define their relationship the way it once had. The two boys, both prodigies, bonded over shared training and easy camaraderie that had never had the chance to develop naturally before.
The effect on Sasuke's personality was profound. Without the isolation and grief that had once hardened him, Sasuke grew into someone far more open and even joyful. His sharp intelligence and determination now balanced by kindness rather than bitterness. A boy who laughed easily with his best friend and looked forward to the future. As graduation approached, Naruto scored higher than any student in recent memory, but instructors, following protocols meant to balance skill levels evenly across squads, initially placed him on a different team. Naruto approached his father directly, requesting to be placed on Team 7 alongside Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi. Minato initially refused, explaining that teams needed to remain balanced and that favoritism would set a troubling precedent. Naruto persisted, explaining carefully how crucial this exact configuration was for preventing negative events he had witnessed in a future that technically no longer existed. Moved by his son's quiet conviction, Minato relented. When Kakashi's infamous bell test arrived, Naruto already knew every trick, having endured the same exercise once before. Rather than falling into individual competition, Naruto immediately pulled his teammates aside and explained the test's true nature, that it was about proving they could work together. Sasuke listened seriously. Sakura quickly agreed, and together the three approached the exercise with coordinated strategy from the start. Kakashi, watching from a distance, found himself quietly impressed by the swift, seamless cooperation, unaware just how much his newest student already understood about the road ahead.
When Jiraiya considered taking on a student, Naruto chose not to pursue that path himself, having already lived through years of training under the Sannin in his previous life. Instead, he made an unusual request that Jiraiya take Sasuke under his wing. When Jiraiya questioned the reasoning, Naruto revealed fragments of the future he remembered, specifically the danger Orochimaru posed to Sasuke, the cursed seal that had once led him down a path of darkness. Jiraiya, recognizing the sincerity behind the request, agreed to watch over and train Sasuke personally. From that point forward, Jiraiya kept a careful eye on Sasuke throughout the Chunin exams and beyond, ensuring Orochimaru never found the chance to isolate him long enough to place his mark. Every attempt Orochimaru made failed, foiled again and again by Jiraiya's watchful presence, and the dark path that had once defined so much of Sasuke's original journey closed before it ever truly opened. At the Chunin exams, Naruto found himself face to face with Gaara of the Sand, a boy whose original story had been marked by unbearable loneliness and fear. This time, Naruto wasted no time. On the very first day, he approached Gaara direct, revealing that he too carried a great beast sealed within him, that he understood intimately the pain of being feared for something he never asked for. The revelation struck something deep within Gaara, who had never before spoken with someone
someone who did not flinch away from the truth of what he carried. Naruto spoke gently about how Kurama had become, over time, less a curse and more a partner, and offered to help Gaara find that same peace with Shukaku. By the time Gaara faced Rock Lee in their preliminary match, the change was unmistakable. Rather than descending into uncontrolled rage, Gaara fought with restraint, and when the moment came that should have ended in devastating injury, he stepped back and accepted a clean, friendly defeat instead. Temari and Kankuro approached Naruto afterward with quiet gratitude, recognizing that whatever he had done for their brother had changed something they had long feared was beyond saving. By the time skip, Naruto had already reached a level of strength that once took years of additional training to achieve, freeing him to focus on protecting the people he cared about, rather than catching up to threats on the horizon. When Jiraiya prepared to investigate mysterious Akatsuki activity in Amegakure, Naruto urged him not to go alone, warning that the enemies waiting there could overwhelm even a signing. Jiraiya, trusting his young friend's insight, agreed to bring reinforcements. This time, Jiraiya traveled with Sasuke, now a formidable genjutsu user, and Itachi, whose Sharingan mastery made him one of the most dangerous shinobi alive. With two powerful genjutsu specialists fighting alongside him, Jiraiya's confrontation with Pain unfolded far differently than before. The combined might of the three shinobi overwhelmed even Pain's formidable abilities, turning what should have been a devastating loss into a hard-fought but decisive victory. In the aftermath, the group finally faced Nagato himself, the broken man whose grief had driven him to embrace violence as the only path to peace. Rather than treating him as merely another enemy, Jiraiya, drawing on his history as Nagato's former teacher, approached him with understanding rather than vengeance. Naruto spoke passionately about believing in a world where understanding could triumph over hatred without the devastating losses Nagato's methods demanded. Slowly, the rigid conviction that had defined Nagato's path cracked open. By the end of their conversation, Nagato agreed to abandon his violent pursuit of peace, redirected instead toward genuine reconciliation. Konan, who had stood beside him through every step of his transformation, watched with cautious hope. With Nagato and Konan no longer aligned against them, the group turned their attention toward the true architect behind so much suffering, Obito Uchiha, whose plans now stood on far shakier ground than ever before. With Nagato's redirection, Obito found one of his most crucial pieces of leverage suddenly removed, and he made no move against Konan, understanding any confrontation would only invite a fight he was not prepared to win. Minato and Naruto agreed the time had come to move directly against Obito's remaining plans. Naruto intercepted Hidan and Kakuzu before they could cross paths with Asama Saratobi, sparing his old mentor a confrontation that had once cost him his life, and systematically dismantled their combined threat. Turning next to Kabuto Yakushi, whose knowledge of forbidden techniques like Edo Tensei posed a unique threat, Naruto hunted him down and captured him before his most dangerous plans could come to fruition. One by one, every ally and asset Obito had spent years cultivating fell away, leaving him increasingly isolated and without resources. With his network dismantled, Obito found himself utterly alone, hiding within his hideout with nothing left but bitter memories of everything he had sacrificed for a dream that had crumbled entirely out of reach. Minato, accompanied by Kakashi, Kushina, and Naruto, arrived to confront him directly, choosing to face their old friend not with force, but with the same understanding that had already transformed so much of this altered timeline. Obito offered no resistance, no desperate final stand. Instead, faced with the people he had once called friends, something within him finally broke open. He apologized, haltingly at first, and then with growing sincerity to Kakashi for the manipulation he had inflicted, to Minato and Kushina for the attack that had nearly destroyed their family, and to Naruto, whose very existence had unraveled every plan Obito had spent years constructing. Kakashi, Minato, and Kushina, moved by his genuine remorse, found it within themselves to forgive him, though the road back would clearly take time. Minato understood that forgiveness alone could not be the full resolution. As Hokage, responsible for the safety of the entire village, he could not simply overlook the consequences of Obito's actions. After careful consideration, he deliberately delivered his judgment. Rather than imprisonment, Obito would dedicate himself to serving as a guardian for the various villages that had suffered under Akatsuki's shadow, using his skills to help rebuild rather than destroy. It was a sentence built not on vengeance, but on the belief that even those who had fallen deeply into darkness could still find meaningful ways to contribute.
Obito, humbled by the mercy extended to him, agreed readily, committing himself fully to leaving behind the man he had become. In the years that followed, he traveled from village to village, lending his strength to communities still recovering, slowly rebuilding not only the world around him, but his own sense of purpose, finally freed from the grief and vengeance that had once defined his existence. With Obito's plans dismantled, the Akatsuki disbanded, and the balance of power preserved without tipping into devastating conflict, the world settled into an era of genuine, lasting peace, unlike anything it had known in generations. There were no great shinobi wars to mourn, no villages reduced to rubble. The years that followed unfolded quietly and steadily, filled with growth and healing, the simple rhythms of ordinary life finally allowed to flourish without the looming shadow of catastrophe. Naruto, having spent both a lifetime and a second childhood protecting the people and future he cherished most, finally found himself able to simply live, to enjoy the fruits of everything he had fought so hard to secure. He grew into adulthood surrounded by the very family and friends he had once lost, carrying not the scars of devastating loss, but the quiet contentment of a man given an impossible second chance. In time, he found love and happiness of his own, building a family alongside the parents who, against all odds, had lived to see their son grow, marry, and thrive. Years later, on a quiet afternoon bathed in golden sunlight, Naruto found himself sitting beside his parents atop the great stone monument bearing the carved faces of every Hokage who had ever led their beloved village, his father's likeness proudly among them. Minato and Kushina sat close on either side of him, older now, but still radiant with the same warmth and strength that had always defined them, watching together as the village stretched out peacefully below, alive with laughter and the simple beauty of ordinary days lived without fear. Naruto looked out over Konoha, a place he had once known only through loneliness and struggle, now flourishing beneath skies unmarked by war, and felt a deep, quiet pride settle over him. This was the pride of a son who had reached back through the impossible boundaries of time, simply for the chance to sit exactly where he now sat, beside his mother and father, together, safe and happy. Kushina rested her hand on his shoulder, and Minato smiled quietly beside, none of them needing to say a word, because the silence between them carried everything that mattered. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting the mountain and village below in warm hues of orange and gold, Naruto smiled, knowing that whatever the future held, this moment, this family, this peace had all been worth every impossible step it took to get here.